I think that's what happens to people. They have either a personal experience with being sold and, like you said, being duped or tricked into buying something they don't really want.
Sure.
I can relate to both sides of that coin. And so then it just set me up for years of feeling like dreading a sales experience. Whenever you have to buy a car, you're like, oh God, they're going to put me through the ringer. How am I going to walk out of there feeling like I got a good deal? And it just gets your mindset. I think there are a lot of people who feel that way. How do we get over that ick of the sales experience?
I wrote a book and it's called ESP, Easy Sales Process. Here's why it's important. So I have a 7-step process. The first chapter is called love. I know you're reading, Connie, love, sales. What are you talking about? And here's the reality. Whoever the person is in front of us, I don't care. I don't care what you're selling. If you are not coming from love, care, and respect and understanding that person fully before you open your mouth with a recommendation, shame on you. So as soon as we shift from that, I have to give my pitch to, let me understand this person, and then I'll know exactly what they need.
Great title for a podcast, Blessings.
Thank you. Yes, I love it.
What a great meditation.
We are here to learn in the spirit of life.
I'm all about believe. You're about spreading blessings. It's great.
What about your blessings? What's the biggest blessing of life?
What a great question.
Because it's the Blessings podcast, I have to ask you, what is your biggest lesson in life?
My biggest lesson in life.
A whole lot of conversations with people about life and how those things manifest as blessings and lessons, and sometimes both.
It's my connection.
You're going to get schooled.
The journey is the journey.
What you and me are searching for are the blessings in this life.
Remember the reality of how sweet people are.
Spread blessings around the world.
You are the most remarkable energy. You make me pause, make me excited, make me think, and make me spontaneously come up with an answer. This is another one of those great moments in time in my life. Thank you for reaching out to ask if I would do the show.
Welcome back to Blessings, my friends. Today, I'm excited to be talking to a dynamic woman who has devoted her life to helping others succeed. She likes to look at both sides of any issue and finds it interesting to dig into big topics. So it makes sense that in addition to a thriving business changing the sales game, she also has 2 podcasts, one that deals with the business end of things and one that explores the more spiritual aspects of life and business. She's all about genuine connection. Her warmth and wit are contagious, and she's exactly the sort of person you could sit down to coffee with and find yourself looking at the clock 3 hours later, feeling like you've known her all your life. Welcome, Connie Whitman, to the show.
Mitzi, thank you so much for having me. That is true. All that you said is true. So thank you. That was a lovely introduction. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. So let's start out with a little bit of background. You are in sales, and that is the name of your business, Changing the Sales Game. So tell us, how did you become an expert in sales?
This is such a good question. And it's unfortunately, it's not just a one-word answer, right? But I could give you some context. So when I graduated school, you get the first job you can, right? You don't know anybody, you don't know what you're doing, you get the job. So I got a job at a credit company for car dealerships, and they put me in the lease department. And back in the 80s, no one knew what a lease was. It was really good though for business owners. They could write off the whole car payment versus mileage and all of that. So I would get these deals in from the dealership, from the guys. They were all men, right? The salesmen. And I'd say, this really should be a lease. And they'd say, we don't know how to do the calculation. I said, we didn't have computers. So I said, pull out your calculator. I'll teach you. See, the first word in sales is teach, educate. I'll educate you. Mm-hmm. And then at the end, they'd say, now what do we say to the client? And I'd say, oh my gosh, just tell it. And I would hit them with all the benefits that they should have shared with the business client. And of course, the business client would come in, renegotiate the contract, right? Because it was a better deal for them. Payments were about the same. Additionally, what ended up happening is those business owners loved the dealer, right? Loved the salesman. And they started referring their peers over, their other business owner peers. So all of a sudden, right, these salesmen were making bank. They were making a lot of money. Fast forward about a year. I did this for about a year. We grew the lease department. I'm going to say we had 0 deals till about 500 a week. So that was a lot. That was a lot back then.
Oh,
so yeah, it grew exponentially.
Right.
So you teach someone and then they understand, right? You teach them how to fish and they could survive versus fishing for them, right? That old saying from the Bible. So not that I'm religious, but that's just what popped into my head. So
No,
anyway,
yeah.
fast forward a year, all of a sudden there's a sales position open for the credit company I worked for to try to get dealers to use us more as the bank than the other banks. And so the dealers these guys start calling me and they were like, you're going to apply, right? And Mitzi, this was my response. Why would I apply for a sales position? I know nothing about sales. And they said, what do you think you've been doing with us for the past year? You've been teaching us how to sell better to, in this case, the small business owner. Go to my boss and I say, hey, did you know I'm good at this? Can I throw my hat in the ring? And he said, they'll never let me promote you because you're a girl. So I said, okay. And I thought, I'm out of here. But he's a really good guy, right? He was the messenger. I don't kill the messenger. So he said to me, Con, you've outgrown us. In a year, you've outgrown us. So what you really need to do is get your resume together, look for a job. I'll help you. He says, I'll look through your resume. I'll let you go on interviews. You don't have to take time off. He said, but you need to get out of here. And I was like, okay, so what do you do? So I spoke with friends who were advisors in banks and insurance, and I went and got my licenses. I was also, this is the context as well, I was going for my MBA in the evening in finance. So I thought, oh, this is a good fit. I'll go and get my securities license and my Series 7 and all of those, my insurance licenses, and I'll be a financial advisor. See, now again, here's my thought with this, Mitzi. It wasn't, I'm going to sell insurance and investments and homeowners, right? The property and casualty. Mine was, oh, I could teach people. I'm learning all this information, right? I have all this knowledge now. I can really help people discern how much insurance do you need? What kind of investments are you looking for? All of those pieces of the puzzle. So it really excited me because I understood the topic, right? Money, but I also understood people and that everybody doesn't know everything. So what was my zone of genius and how can I make that decision-making process just a little bit easier and a little more confident, right? When we're talking about money, it's important for our future, for our kids, for our legacy, but we become fearful and then we don't do what we should be doing. So if I can educate, I felt I could help people be in a better financial position. So that's how I really got into sales. And that was 42 years ago. And I never looked back.
Great.
It found me, Mitzi. It
I
found
know,
me.
but you know what I love about that so much is that you just shifted my entire mindset around sales by explaining it as education rather
Oh my
than,
God.
yeah.
Yay.
I have difficulty with sales. And I'll tell you a story. This is funny. When I was 19 years old, I worked at this place called Outdoor World in the Poconos. I worked in this call center and people would get a piece of mail that said they won a prize and they would call this call center and I had to make an appointment for them to go on a tour of this campground. So I did this one year. The next year I got promoted to salesperson. And so I had to learn this whole spiel. It was like this whole memorized speech that you had to say to people. They brought people into this sales like big building and they would come in and they would sit down in a group and they would put on America's Funniest Home Videos for them. Now, I always thought this was crazy because these are videos of people like slipping and falling or, they're not to me what's funny, but they insisted that they had research. This was going to make people get in the mood to buy these campground memberships. So by the time I got them, they've been sitting in this room for about 2 hours watching America's Funniest Home Videos. And I had to now try and sell them this membership. And I took them on the tour of the facility. We crammed into the back of my little Ford Escort with no air conditioning, and I drove them to the lake. And the thing is, I didn't like this place. This was not my idea of a good vacation. I would never have vacationed in this way. To me, it was just not even on the radar of something that I would like to do as my vacation. And it was okay, but it was a campground and there were a lot of people and it was crowded all the time and it just wasn't my bag. So anyway, I'm trying to sell this thing that I don't believe in it really. And it was expensive. So the whole summer long, I sold one campground membership. One. I think I made $75 for the whole summer.
Oh, that's so sad.
I know. And the whole time I just felt bad about what I was doing because I didn't believe in the product. When you hear me telling that story, what does that make you think about? And what happened? And do we have to believe in what we're selling? And all of that. What does it make you think when I tell that?
Yeah, it's such a great story. So first of all, right out of the gate, when you said they had a script, I
Yeah.
don't believe in scripts. So when I work with my clients, I go in, right, and they'll say to me, "Do you have a script?" And then if the client says yes, I should say this. If the client, I said no, that's horrible because the person knows you're reading. And then they ask you a question. And then you go back, where was I? And you try to go back to the script. Horrifying. It's not authentic. It's not real. You're selling them. They know you're selling them. And that's where that ick factor comes in. Internally, we all have been sold. We all have been duped. We have all been tricked to buy something. And then on the back end, not what we thought it was. So we become super hypersensitive. Additionally, to Mitzi, why this probably was happening for you. There's movies out there like Wolf of Wall Street, and then Madoff, De Niro was Madoff. That I don't remember the name of that. I don't remember the name. Anyway, those movies teach us, Glenn Ross in the 90s, always be closing, offensive. That is how we perceive sales. And I'm on a mission to change that because it doesn't have to be that way. And oh, by the way, when we have a more gentle approach or authentic or real relationship-based vibe versus transactional, we make more sales, make more money. So here's what went wrong. They had a script. So when I first started, when I got my financial degree, my Series 7 and all the licensing, I got a job with Prudential. And I remember the first day, and I remember this was back in the late 80s, early 90s. They gave me a phone book and they said, go make phone calls. We didn't have computers. We didn't have Google. We didn't have websites. Didn't exist. The internet didn't exist, or was just coming to be. So they gave me a script and I went to the phone book, and the script was so horrifying because it was generic, it was scripted, it was improper grammar. And not that we should be speaking slang when we're reaching out, we should still show up professional. But for example, the intro was, my maiden name is Frega, Ms. Frega from the Prudential, good evening. You see how I can't even do that? I sound like I'm Dracula, right? I'm going to Volker blood. It was so weird that I would never say good evening. I was 20 something years old. So it was an epic fail the first few days. And I thought, oh my God, I quit a job where I had a paycheck. Now I'm on full commission. I can't even get an appointment, let alone make a sale. And then I went back and I created my own script. So what I did is introduction. So instead I would ask you, hey, or may I speak with Mitzi Campbell? And you'd say speaking. And I'd say, hi, this is Connie Frager for the Prudential. How you doing today? How you doing? 42 years later, that's still it's professional, but casual. That's who I am. So right out of the gate, I became authentic. I was always the number one salesperson. And I got appointments hand over fist on the phone. Now you have to remember this was on the phone back in that time. So that was the first mistake. Now again, I don't know what their model was, but they're out of business. Need I say more? The script, if they have someone intelligent, they should say, listen, let's work on building your scripts, your voice, we're going to get the context of what we need. I use their script formatting, their template. I just put my words in instead of this very scripted response. So that was number one. Number two, now they bring the people together and they make them watch a video unrelated to what you were selling. Now, if they got up there and said, hey, as a quick intro, we want everybody to laugh and feel good. We're going to take 5 minutes, watch these silly videos, and then we're off to the races. We're going to bring you to the tour, right? That's what you're all here for. I get the concept, but 2 hours, you've already lost people. Our attention span is reducing every day. 2 hours is much too long. And then having them use your car that didn't have air conditioning. Now I'm uncomfortable. And all I'm thinking is, when do I get out of here? And then additionally, you don't even like the place. So here's the other thing. The company should have had you use the amenities and play and use it so you can talk from your personal experience of what I was able to do. Oh my gosh, let me show you. And right, there would have been a level of enthusiasm, whether that was your idea of a vacation. By letting you use the amenities, you could speak directly to your experience, right? So you're going to highlight the ones where you had a good experience because you can't get through everything in that tour. You could show perhaps, but you can't tell all the stories. And that was the other thing. They didn't allow you to experience and then share your story. So your whole subconscious, because we talk from our subconscious realm, right? 95%, there's my woo, right? Mitz, there's my woo.
Yes.
95% of communication is all subconscious. So your 95% was screaming, whether you realize it or not, was screaming at the people, the guests that you were showing around. I don't like this place. I don't like this place. I don't like this place. They felt it. And that's why you did not, in my opinion, you did nothing wrong. You were trained improperly, number one. And number two, your psyche, your mindset was not in a position to make those sales. Got all that in alignment. Did that make sense, Mitz?
Definitely. It really did make sense. That experience then shaped me moving forward. And
Sure.
I think that's what happens to people. They have either a personal experience with being sold and you, like you said, being duped or tricked into buying something they don't really want.
Sure.
I can relate to both sides of that coin. And so then it just set me up for years of feeling like dreading a sales experience. Whenever you have to buy a car, you're like, oh God, they're going to put me through the ringer. How am I going to walk out of there feeling like I got a good deal? And it just gets your mindset. I think there are a lot of people who feel that way. How do we get over that ick of the sales experience?
Yeah, I published a book during COVID. It's what all business owners did because everything closed down. Write a book. So I did. I wrote a book and it's called ESP, Easy Sales Process. Here's why it's important. So I have a 7-step process and it talks about being preparation, but the first chapter is called love. And I know the first sentence, I think, I know you're reading Connie, love, sales. What are you talking about? And here's the reality. If we are not whoever the person is in front of us, I don't care. I don't care what you're selling. If you are not coming from love, care, and respect and understanding that person fully before you open your mouth with a recommendation, shame on you. So as soon as we shift from that, I have to give my pitch to, let me understand this person, and then I'll know exactly what they need. And I'm going to share something. My 6th step is asking for the business, right? So 3 things should happen when you've gone through the process, right? Now you're ready to ask for the business. 1, the client is saying, holy moly, where have you been my whole life? I've been looking for whatever this exact thing is that you're selling. So it's a good fit. You're leaning in, you're loving each other, right? It feels good. It's natural. It's authentic. They're ready for you. Second one is they go, yeah, I need you, but there's a but. I don't have the money. I don't have the time. My response when someone says that, I say, you're right. You do need me. You're not ready for me. You're getting your website going. You're doing this, you're doing this, you're doing this. Let's start talking. Let me talk to your marketing person so we make sure what you're building from a sales perspective, that authenticity comes through on the marketing side. Now, I'm not getting paid yet, right? But I partner with their partners, right? They're whoever's doing the work. And then I say in 3 months, you'll be ready to learn how to sell more effectively, but we'll have all your assets organized. So one is, oh my gosh, how fast can we do this? Second one is, you're not ready for me. Let's do this. And then in 3 months, 6 months, whatever the time frame is. So now you're creating this passive income. It becomes a light lift 3 months from now. I've already made the sale. The money just hasn't been exchanged. So everybody goes, oh, it's not done until the money's exchanged. There's truth in that. But if I push them, what's going to end up coming out of at the back end is Connie's training wasn't good. I couldn't put the time in. She moved too fast. It's a misfit. Timing wise, not that me and the person or the organization is a misfit. And then the third one is I've said to clients, I know exactly what you're looking for, and I'm not the person to deliver it. I'm going to introduce you to my friend Mitzi. She's exactly what you need. Trust me, I've worked with her. I vetted her. So now when I hand off and I give the referral to Mitzi, that client, you're coming in, they might vet other people, but you have that edge because they already trusted me. I was honest in that engagement. Now I'm handing off to you. So now what does that do? So now Mitzi's, oh my God, Con, I got this business. You're great. Thank you for referring me. You're going to be looking for business for me. It's this whole ripple effect, reciprocity, universal law of reciprocity, whatever you want to call it. It's real, but you have to show up honestly. And the other thing I wanted to say, when you get to that point of asking for the business, 70% of that whole engagement through that sales conversation or conversation, we can call it, 70% you're listening, your mouth is shut. You're taking notes, you're engaged, you're asking really good follow-up questions. So we're digging in, we're digging in, we're digging in. So you have so much clarity on where the client is, what the real situation is. I hate the word pain point. Everybody uses it. It's overused. It's not a pain point. What's their situation? Good, bad, and ugly. Doesn't matter. Where are you? And can I potentially help? And if the answer is yes, that's when I present my ideas. So I'm not vomiting information throughout. You should hire me. You should hire me. I don't know if you should hire me till the end, me personally, when I'm in a sales conversation. Did that make sense, Mitzi?
Definitely. Your approach is really positive and it's making me feel so good as even you're talking because in the world that I'm running in, the personal development world, there are a lot of people trying to sell their services. And I work with a lot of people who are coaches, a lot of people who are trying to get other people to purchase a course or something like this. And it is very difficult. There's a whole rigmarole that you have to go through. And it does feel in some ways like you're playing a game. And I know that your whole title is changing the sales game. And I love that because I don't want to play games. When I'm engaged in a relationship with someone that I'm going to be spending money or I'm going to be asking someone to spend their
Yeah.
money with me, I don't want it to feel like a game.
Nope.
I want it to be something that's going to be mutually beneficial. It's got to
Yep.
be a win. And so I love that. So why is it that there's so much of this like gaming the system and sleazy sales stuff? Why do people fall back on that?
Yeah, it's funny. I think some people it's about the money. It's transactional. They're
Mhm.
not my people. They're
Yeah.
not working with me. And I work with corporations mostly. I work with small business owners as well, but mostly corporations, banks specifically, because my finance background.
Sure.
But anyway, I went in and I got the vibe of that. Just teach them how to make sales. We need to grow 20%, but we don't care how they do it. I'm not your gal. See ya. Right. Because my values have to line up with theirs. So I think that's part of the problem too. If you're looking from the transactional, I have to pay my mortgage, I have to make money, you've already lost the sale. Again, that subconscious energy is coming through. You appear desperate versus I'm here to help, right? I'm sincerely here to help you. So that's the first thing. The other thing, I think why people go into product dump, and I'm going to say product dump, they love what they're doing. I meet you and I know I can help you. I know I can help you. I could transform your life. And you're worried about minutia. Your mind is not where it needs to be able to work with me and make the money you need to make, whatever it is, right? Whatever you're selling. If I see you that I need you, what happens is, but they need me, is what my clients say all the time. I go, yes, they do. They're not ready for you.
Yeah.
So you keep calling them. And then what happens is we badger them. And so now they see Mitzi on the phone and they go, oh, what does she want? Voicemail. You send an email. They ghost you because you're offensive to them. You think you're being helpful. They don't know they need you. And until that light bulb goes off, just shut your mouth. Don't put an offer out there. What I would do in that situation is you think, oh my gosh, they need me. Oh boy, oh, do they need me? Great. Nurture them, have conversations with them, meet with them. Hey, how'd that go? I gave you that idea to try. Did it work for you? So you nurture them. And then what ends up happening, if they're the right client, so sometimes we chase the wrong client. That's another whole conversation. But if it really is your ideal client and you nurture them and give them little tricks and tips and things to strategize and they see movement, when the time is right, they actually will hire you. Let's face it, Mitzi, when people say, oh, I can't afford it, it's BS. If you really want it, you really need it, you budget the money and you do what you need to do. And I'll give you a specific example. I'm older, right? I'm 63. So running and hard exercise like I used to do when I was younger, my body just can't handle it anymore. So there's a Pilates studios right across the highway from me here. But it's $200 and something a month. To me, that's a lot of money. Okay. But I am strong. I feel good. It's a mindset thing for me. I go every day. And I said to my husband, I go every day faithfully. It is worth the $250. So we give up something else on the other end, take out dinner or whatever. So you always can find less, God forbid, you're unemployed. I'm not minimizing that, but that's just an example of that became a priority for me and my health. So I found the money in the budget and we gave up something else. So when people say to you, they don't have the money, there's something else going on. Our job is to figure that out. It could just be the timing's off.
Yeah. How would you like to get the best text of your life? This is your sign that it's time to add something powerful to your morning routine that sets you up for success and reminds you that you are worthy and makes you unstoppable. It's a motivational text message from me, a real human. I am Mitzi Campbell, a mindset specialist, and I know that it is possible for you to live the life of your dreams. My morning motivational text messages help you up-level your mindset, your happiness, and your success. Sign up for a 2-week free trial at yourpositivemoment.com and change your life. Today, join the movement so we can all thrive together. yourpositivemoment.com. I love what you said there about the idea of people who believe that they truly can transform someone else's life. And I know that we have that belief in ourselves, that we know as a healer, as a coach, as a whatever it is that you're selling, it doesn't matter. We do, if you believe it really can transform somebody's life, that is true. But you do have to step away from your ego in that instance, because like you said, it may not be the right time for them. And maybe you're not the person who's going to deliver that lesson in their lives. And that detaching from that, somehow detaching from the ego of it, that is a big part of the sales process as well. Knowing that you can help someone with your product is only a part of it. The rest of it is all about the alignment.
It's
And
always
that's
about
it.
the alignment. Mhm.
Yeah. And is that what led you to realize that you could not separate the spiritual from the business?
Yeah, that's another great question. So I started my business. My kids were babies. I had a 1-year-old and a 4-year-old, and I was 39. I started my business, and I had a client, and I worked with them for about 15 years because they were a big organization. And anytime new hires came in, they would go through their internal training and then Connie's training. It was that kind of thing. So I
Yeah.
worked with them for a very long time until they got bought out. And I remember one of my requests is always that the executive of whatever division I'm training in the banking, it usually ends up being all the divisions. They start with one, and then the word gets out. What are you guys doing over there? We see some changes in behavior, and they want to get on the bandwagon. So I don't even have to do the work, right? They all advertise for me, which is cool. See, again, that means it's a good fit. I'm a good fit. So
Yes.
anyway, you meet all these people within the organization, and I just lost my train of thought. What was your question again? Spirituality. So
Yes.
one of my takes me a minute. One of my rules is the executives or the division heads have to come through my training, because at the end there's a coaching piece for leaders. Now your people have been trained, great. I can't be here anymore. I train them, I leave. Who's coaching them? Who's observing? Who's supporting? Because that's really when the learning begins. So executives have to come through my training. So one of the executives, every 5 years, or every 3 years, really, she would come through my training as a refresher for her, but also to let her people know this is important. I'm advocating as well for the program, right? So it showed internal support versus flavor of the day for the training. And after the 5th year, she came to me and she goes, wow, your training, it's the same, but there's a difference. And I said, oh, good or bad? And she said, oh my God, she says, you're so spiritual. I never realized that before. And now I'm in corporate. I didn't even realize this had happened to me and how I delivered. And she said, it was beautiful. And I said, oh, I could breathe again. My feelings, my beliefs should not be imposed. But and here's what I did, right? I wasn't imposing. She was a spiritual person as well. So I would be sitting in the classroom, Mitzi, and I would say, Mitzi, your body language just shifted. Tell me what's going on. Because when you're in front of your client energetically, they're feeling your energy. That's going to dictate whether they say yes or no, whether they feel comfortable with you or not. That was spiritual to her. She saw that. Everybody else were like, oh, that's true. If I'm in a bad mood, my clients say, why are you in a bad mood? So see, I made it real for them, but she saw the spiritual component of it. So when about 40, I started on my spiritual journey. So about 23 years ago, and my client saw it and thought, wow, your training's even more impactful. Like it's even deeper, and people feel you, like they walk out feeling your message, not just hearing the message. And that was the best compliment I could have gotten. So as my journey of business owner developed, right, of teaching versus me being the salesperson, my whole self, I didn't know how to not do that, Mitzi, though, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. The idea of energy and frequency. And so some people can look at this, and I've spoken to some experts in body language and in facial recognition, the way that you look at the features of the face and then how it corresponds to something in sales. There's a guy that I've had on the show, Brian Galkey. Actually, you'd be really interested in him. He talks about that exact thing, body language and your facial expressions in sales, and how you can recognize certain things and then utilize them in understanding your client better to be able to help them in sales. And it's just that is spiritual. We all have a frequency, and whether or not you think of it that way doesn't really matter, because that is what's happening. Gosh, if anybody out there who has a teenage child, you can remember mornings when they come into the kitchen and you know whether or not you're going to say hello.
Absolutely.
You know their vibe coming into the room before they even take two steps into your presence. And we feel each other's vibes that way.
Yep.
So I love that you acknowledge that and make it a part of the training process.
And what's interesting, Mitzi, you have conversations like that executive. We had a great conversation about being whole, right? If we're not whole, mind, body, spirit, how can we really impact the world, impact our client, in her case, right? Impact her team, whatever it was. We have to be healthy. We have to show up in good standing. And that's why my self-care had to change. But if I'm not healthy, my mind, body, and spirit, and I'm not strong, right? And I'm sick all the time, I can't show up for my clients. They're going to feel that the training's not going to be dynamic enough. It's not going to be engaging enough. It's going to be missing something. And I think that's the other thing too. I'm a good fit. Okay, great. But there's that, but what do you need to really do to align with that client? And I'll share another story if we have time. Can I share another story?
Plenty of time. Sure.
I remember another organization, bank, and I did training, and their training room was down in like the basement, but it wasn't a basement. It was beautiful. It was finished and lovely, and kitchen and the whole thing. So finished training. When I come in, I clean up, I set up. I don't expect their training team to pick up after me. So it's just not how I was raised, right? I'm not an animal. So I was cleaning up and throwing trash away. People had left, what have you. And the head of HR came down and all the people had left now. And she goes, "Hey, how'd it go?" And I says, "Oh, I thought it was a really good class." Now I had from teller, which is the transactional piece of a bank, all the way up to management and coaches, et cetera. And I said, "Wow," I was a little concerned because I had managers with tellers, but I have to tell you, they were engaged and it was just such a good experience. I said, "You have a really lovely team. I'm so happy and I'm glad we're doing more training and what have you." I said, "Why do you ask?" I said, "Did people say something?" She goes, "Oh, yes," as they were leaving. And Mitzi, my heart dropped. And I thought, oh, maybe what I was feeling, they didn't. See, immediately I take ownership. Did I mess up? The negative record player, right? That we all have it. And she said, no, she said, they all were just so delighted. They're walking on cloud nine. She goes, "But I have to tell you, when I walked in the room, I felt it." I said, "I'm sorry, what do you mean you felt it?" She says, "It was like an electric shock coming in." I go, "A bad shock or a good shock?" She goes, "I felt what they were describing when I walked into your energy. I felt it." Now, I don't have those conversations with executives, right, at banks. And I said, "You did?" And I was reading Eckhart Tolle's book. I don't remember the name of it, but it talked about energy being left behind, right, after people leave a space. She felt that walking in. That's the impact we can have. So what I was feeling, they were feeling. That's alignment. That's connection. I was teaching sales stuff, right? I was teaching them how to sell a checking account. But they walked out feeling empowered and I got this and I can do this. Isn't that part of our job with sales, to make people embrace whatever it is they're selling or learning or buying? That's our job. That's sales.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. And what it says to me is something about what a lot of people call the abundance mindset. So here's what I'm thinking. If you're wanting to sell something, quote, sell something to make money, which is okay. We all want to make money, of course.
Sure.
But like you said earlier, if it's only coming from, that's an energy of desperation and that's a lack consciousness. So the abundance consciousness is more about alignment, open-mindedness, feeling the energy of the room, wanting to empower, wanting to encourage. And what you really want is for the person who is going to be making the money and the person who is going to be spending the money to both feel that abundance consciousness.
That's right.
So it's, how do you get someone who's about to give away their money to feel that energy of abundance?
I think if you're authentic through the entire conversation, I'm going to call it conversation versus a sales. I hate that word pitch. If you're pitching, you're doing it wrong. Like, to me, see, even that word pitch just makes my stomach turn. But I think if you're being authentic throughout, so what happens is as you go through the process, and there's 7 steps. So you go through the process. Each step There's a point to it, but you're the one delivering it. So example would be preparation. Is the person in front of you important? If they're not, you're going to show up and wing it. Dangerous. I never wing it. You got to show up prepared. You have to do your recon. You have to do your research on the client. So then when you come in, the client knows that you did some preparatory stuff. Immediately, subconsciously, they're like, oh, they thought enough of me to do some research and they really showed up prepared and they're mindful of my time. I like them. I'm willing to hear more. The next one is building that rapport, that subconscious connection. And I have a communication model that I use and teach so that who's in front of you energetically, how are they showing up? Do they have a high energy, a low energy? Are they analytical or are they more heart centered, right? Who's in front of you? No matter what your style is, they need you to be heart centered or analytical or right, whatever they need that from you. Then the third step is asking questions, which should be prepared. So you notice how I keep bringing preparation into it. I have my questions prepared. But now you see what you're doing. And for your listeners, there was no agenda. There was no prepared questions. You're asking me questions based on your podcast that your listeners would want to hear. And do you notice all the follow-up questions you're asking? That's listening, which is step 4. So step 3 and 4 are married. If you didn't ask me follow-up questions, I'm telling you this conversation would be lacking. Your listeners wouldn't get as much dynamic insight into what we're talking about. We're getting a little deeper here, right? We're missing that, I think. And that's why we should be listening to the client 70% of the time. And that's the listening piece, step 4. So you're listening to my responses and you're asking these really good follow-up. Good job, Mitzi. You're asking these really good follow-up questions because you're present. You're in alignment with my topic. You're saying, wait, I have another question. You're curious, right? And as soon as we come in curious, we become more active listeners. And now we're really getting to the root of what's going on with this client. And oh, I have the perfect solution. So by the time you get there, Mitzi, you've done so much groundwork that now this customer says to you, how much is it going to cost me? I'm in. And I'll share a really quick story. One of my clients up in Connecticut traveled up there. I walk in, they had 4 vendors before me, didn't know this. And I want to comment on this with the abundance mindset. People saying to me, don't you care who went in before you? No. Don't you care what they shared? No. But I don't care what they shared. I know what I could share. And if I'm the right fit, you're going to choose me. If I'm not, and they were, pick them. There's enough business to go around. Abundance mindset, right? So I walk into the meeting and the CEO says to me, oh, you don't have a PowerPoint slideshow? And I said, very professional of me. I literally stuttered and no one had ever asked me that. And I said, no. And I thought, he doesn't think I'm prepared. So his name is Mark. I said, Mark, I did this research. I know this. I know this. I don't know. What training have you done? What has stuck? We can build from there. Let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. And I went through and I said, I have an agenda and I have questions. And then I'm going to ask follow-up questions. I need to understand, what do you want to happen at the end of this training? Doesn't matter what I could do for you. What do you need from me? And I went through a couple of other things with him that he reiterated. He literally reiterated verbatim what I had said in this private conversation. At the end, they didn't even have my price sheet. I never put my price sheet in because I don't know what the package is going to look like. It's customized for all my clients. He says to me, start scheduling. I said, you don't even know my price sheet. He says, I don't care how much you cost. He goes, I know. I was referred to them. He says, I know you're fair, you're flexible, and that you're going to get the job done. He says, so just start scheduling it for a few bucks. I'm not worried. See, the money shouldn't be the issue. Now, had I not proved myself, they would have said, all right, send the proposal. We'll do a comparison. With the pricing really shouldn't matter if you're being fair. If you're ripping people off, re-examine that. Don't be a jerk, right? Charge the true value.
Yeah. And you brought up something really important in this process, and that is the idea of detachment, detaching from the outcome. That's part of the law of attraction, is that you need to be invested. You need to do all the work. You need to take the right action, and then you need to just let it go. Like you said, if they're the right fit, that's great. If they're not, then they're going to go with the person who is more aligned with them. And that's the way it should be.
Yeah. It's
And I
true.
love what you said about there's enough business to go around too, because we're always like grasping, like we think there's like this pie and we all have to just grab our piece of pie before the whole pie is eaten. And that's not the way it works. It's not life. Life is not like a pie.
It's funny. I have my Changing the Sales Game podcast, and I have other people who train sales. They do what I do. And somebody said to me, "Why did you have them on?" I said, "Oh, I thought their process was a little different than mine, but I liked them. I thought they were dynamic." And they said, "Well, what if people hire them?" I said, "Listen, people know me. They're listening to my podcast. If something he said resonated with them and that's a better match and that's why they're hiring him, I did my job. I shared somebody relevant
Yeah.
to my community." And they were like, "What?" That's the abundance mindset. That's an example of the
Exactly. And
abundance mindset.
that's why you're so successful. So do you use these tools that you teach other people for sales? Do you apply them in your life to parenting or to friendships?
100%.
Okay.
100%.
How?
So example, and I'll share another quick story. I know I'm being mindful of the time.
You're good. No, you're
So
good.
my husband and I, we got married. We communicate 100, we're 180 degrees different. Okay. So my blind spots are his strengths and his blind spots are my strengths. So good combo, right? The yin yang, as I call it. So anyway, we were married about 6 months, and I'm very aggressive, get things done, get out of my way. And I was selling insurance. So I would work nights. I'd get home and he would want to ask questions and chat. And he's very heart centered. And I'm like, let's get the business done. What do we need to do around the house? Do we need to food shop? I'm more of that person. And he's more, how was your day? I don't want to talk about it. So I remember we married about 6 months. And I came home. I had just learned DISC. It's another behavioral model. Doesn't matter if your listeners know what it is. And so I came home and I had learned it. And I thought, oh, I think I have to talk to him about this because I think I'm a bad wife. So I said, could we have a conversation? He loves me. He said, of course, honey, we can talk. And I shared the DISC model with him and I shared my style and his style. And he looked at me, Mitzi, and he goes, oh, this explains so much. From that point on, he and I don't fight. We have never screamed at each other. We have never thrown anything at each other. We haven't walked out of the room on each other. We've never been disrespectful. We disagree. He knows when I'm not happy with him, but we don't rant and rave and scream at each other. We communicate through it. And part of that is, if you want to fight with me, there's conflict. I'll go toe to toe with you right now. My mind's fast. I know what you're going to ask me. I'm going to answer. I talk fast, right? That's my persona. He doesn't. So part of the rule after I taught him DISC was 24-hour rule. He would go back. We were arguing over whatever. He would write his notes out, all of the topics or thoughts that he wanted to share with me. And then the other part of that rule was he had to go first and I had to shut my mouth. I couldn't defend myself. I had to let him share what he was feeling in a safe space without thinking she's going to jump on me. And this is why we don't fight. When he did that, I would say, because we think from a different perspective, that's not what I meant. I am really sorry. And then when I would share what he meant, he would say, oh, I see why you said it that way. And now we're having a conversation. The whole thing is diffused. There's no longer a conflict. We wanted the same thing. We just expressed it in different ways. So those communication models are critical when we talk to our clients, but I use it with my kids. So I taught my kids when they were in middle school, DISC. I taught them how to use that with their teachers, with their peers when there was conflict. I'm going to teach you a tool. This is really important. And to this day, they still use it.
What a beautiful way of explaining it. And this is why it's not a game. It's just authenticity. It's just understanding that conversation is a flow and it's giving and taking. And that's what sales is too. It's a giving and receiving, and it's an exchange of energy. And you've just explained it so beautifully. So I appreciate that. I
My
do.
pleasure.
So my final question is always about the lessons and the blessings of life. So can you tell us what is the biggest lesson and also the biggest blessing of your life?
The biggest lesson for me is patience. And oh, by the way, sales is patient. So I really think sales chose me because that's my journey. I think that's one of the lessons that my soul has to learn is patience, right? To be kind and patient and not judge. But that patient and not judging. Judging, if you look for bad in people or for a difference to you, you're going to find it because no two people are the same. We really are like snowflakes, right? We're unique.
Yep.
If you approach people from that love, care, and respect, and I think if I had to pick a word to define me, it would be respect. So I think that has been a big lesson that I've learned, that don't judge, just accept people and be curious. I don't have to agree with you, but I have to be respectful with your opinion and walk away with whatever at the end of that. So that's the lesson. The blessing, whoosh, I don't know. I have a great life. And do I have deaths and tragedies and kids with issues? And sure, I have all of those things too, but I have a beautiful life.
Wonderful.
Is that a good answer?
It's such a good answer. Yes, every answer is beautiful to those questions. And every time someone shares a lesson, I learned something myself. And I am keeping all of those lessons and blessings in a spreadsheet and going
I
to
love
be,
that.
yeah. And so I'm looking for how people seem to be finding the same lessons and blessings and how those things are commonalities that we have as humans. It's really interesting. I'm
You know
sure I'm
what's
going to include
interesting?
that in a book one day.
I was going to say, you have to write a book because you're doing so many interviews based on that. But here's the thing. If you show up every day, my life sucks. Your life is going to suck.
That's right.
I'd say to my husband every weekend, I love our life. I love our life. And I do. I really do. Do I get angry with him? I have to do the taxes now. Like all these things I hate doing, but I do love our life. So I think we have to articulate that and feel, again, part of the energy is feeling that abundance, feeling that love, and the blessings just come. So it's hard to pick one, Mitzi. It really
Yeah.
challenged me there.
When you say that affirmation, I love my life, then your life is going to love you back.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
So, Connie, where can people find you and where can they find your podcasts as well?
If you go to changingthesalesgame.com, everything's there. I have the communication style assessment. It's a gift. Everybody could take that.
Yeah.
They'll get
I've taken
report.
it. It's very useful.
Yeah,
Very
it's
useful.
pretty cool. And then, of course, if they have questions after taking the test, they could reach out to me. So that changingthesalesgame.com. And then my email is Connie@changingthesalesgame.com. If they have a specific question, they can email me. I'm happy to. And I respond to my emails, by the way. See, again, it's personal to me. Business is personal. I don't outsource that kind of thing.
And I think after a conversation with you, people can get the sense of the type of person you are and how they can really trust what you have to share. And it reminds me of like when I'm going on my Instagram and I see these ads and there's this beautiful woman and there's a gorgeous graphic and it says, join my course to teach you how to get more sales. I've made $1 million in 2 months. And that stuff is enticing and it's so tempting. But if you really want to change your sales game, it would be much better to sit down with somebody like Connie, who has the experience and who has the authenticity.
Thank you. I love that. Thank you so much. I appreciate that compliment.
You're welcome. Thanks for joining me, Connie.
I love you, kiddo. Thank you so much for having me.
And I really do feel like we could sit down I feel like it might be 3 hours later.
For sure.
Hey, everybody still listening, will you go give a 5-star review to this podcast? Mitzi puts in so much effort and so much love into this. She's brilliant. She deserves it. So I am going to go right now. By the way, by the time you hear this and you go give your 5-star review, you should be able to go find my 5-star review of this podcast. But I just want to thank you for what you're doing.